Okay, we're back, and yes, there's pictures following my hands right now, and we're gonna kind of do this in a couple segments because I have a couple pictures to share with you guys. But as Friday hits, this is where we're doing our frequently asked questions, and we're gonna be talking today about like timelines, expected time on the table when it comes to electrolysis. Now, here's the deal. There are a lot of variables when it comes to your timeline, when it comes to the density in the area, when it comes to your pain threshold or financial portions of it, if you're not doing it through insurance. So as we dive into this conversation, understand that why I'm bringing up each step of this is so that we can paint a bigger picture so that when you go to your electrologist, you can talk to them about like realistic expectations to get to permanent. Okay, so first thing I'm going to show you is what we like to call at Zapmaster is feathering. Now feathering, this technique here, okay, and I'm going to bring my hands up. You can pause to read. Feathering is a technique that we use to help thin out high volume, high density areas so that we can preserve as much tissue as possible. Now, feathering is a wonderful technique, especially when we're working through the middle of the face. So when we're working through that middle of the face, right in here, this area is usually the highest density, highest volume in the area. Usually it's the darkest because there's so much hair there that's where you see the most shadowing. But it also tends to be an area that's not very forgiving to a lot of heat damage. So when we start working in this space, okay, right in here, we really have to take a very calculated approach to how we treat those hairs and that skin in the area. You have to remember, we're trying to get rid of your hair permanently, right? Not your skin. So when we start working into these areas, there's gonna be areas of your face where we can do closer to 100% clearance. And as we get closer to the center, in your first few sessions, it's gonna be more like a 25% clearance. Now, let's think about it this way. If I go 100, 75, 50, 25 every time you come in, that means I get closer to 100% as I move forward with each treatment. So 4 sessions at 25% would be 100% clearance in that zone, and it would not create as much thermal heat irritation in that area, okay? So when we're trying to get through the process, the more density that's there, the longer that might take, because let's face it, if there was like every hair follicle had a hair in it, then guess what? That's gonna take us a little bit longer because we can't go at 25%, we might have to go 10 to 25%. So as we start to assess the area, we're gonna start to look at what that volume looks like. Now, next picture. Pause to read. Okay, so now with that one, what you're seeing is you are seeing how long the hair grows in the anagen phase and what its expected time in the telogen phase is. The catagen phase is not really measured there, which is like basically your transitional phase where it's detaching from its blood source. It's moving into its shedding phase. And it's kind of a quick transition, so they don't really have to categorize it very much in this space. But really we wanna know how long it's in the anagen, how long it's in the telogen, so that we know how soon we should be able to see you. Now, variables that come into play here is what have you been doing to the hair in between methods of removal before me, okay? So if you were waxing, I know that the chances of you being in an anagen cycle is higher because you never allow those hairs to go phase through their life. The minute they pop up, you're back in that waxer's chair 4 weeks later, right? Two to 4 weeks later is kind of average. And we also know that like different bodies have different timelines. If we think about like the average assigned female at birth facial PCOS hair, okay, we're gonna assume that pretty much a 13-week window in the anagen phase is kind of like pretty standard. But as we move into someone who might be assigned male at birth, who can grow a longer facial hair pattern, and this is not all standard, so when I say this, understand that these are the majority, not everybody. So if we have someone who's assigned male at birth and they can grow very long facial hair, we understand that it's going to take longer for those hairs to return to the anagen phase. And we also know that in most cases, those individuals have not been waxing, right? So it is very rare for us to see someone wax that much facial hair because quite frankly, it's very painful, okay? And the other thing is we're used to shaving that hair at that volume. So I also know that when I start shaving, the chances of me having varied styles of hair growth, meaning anagen, catagen, telogen, does change, which means my rate of regrowth also changes. So as I start to look at my volume and density patterns, and I start to look at how long those hairs should be in the best stage of growth for removal. Now, you can kill a hair in every stage. I'm just saying our best stage of growth is going to be where you have all structures present so that you can break down all structures of that hair without having to really overwork the tissue. Now, if you can take those two things into consideration, you can start to formulate what that treatment plan will look like for yourself based on what you know about your hair and what you inform us about your hair. So as we're going through that patient history form, so the medical records that we have you fill out beforehand and we start to assess that, what we're doing is we're creating what that picture looks like. How you've removed the hair in the past, what the area, like when the hairs first started coming in, is this density at its full potential? Like have we seen no new growth coming into that area? We start seeing that over and over and over, and we can start to paint that overall picture. Now, we have one more picture, so hold on one second. Here's the last picture. Now this is a Ferriman-Galloway scale. Obviously pause to read. I'll put that back up there one more time for you. Now, the Ferriman-Galloway scale is for us to be able to determine the level of hirsutism someone is experiencing when they have their hair problems. If you're experiencing high density areas, it has been increasingly prevalent when you have hormonal issues happening. You have had major fluctuations in your medical history, and you're noticing a trend with your medical history fluctuations with that hair problem. You can also start to format another part of this picture. So while we understand how long that hair grows in each phase of growth, okay, we can then say, have we had recent hormonal fluctuations that may also build another component to this? Each stage of this process helps us understand what that overall timeline is going to look like, what that overall frequency of treatment is going to look like, and what to expect overall in your treatment plan. Okay, if you are not medically managed when it comes to hormones and your hairs are hormone sensitive, you are going to be chasing new growth for a little while. That doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to have adverse overall treatments. It just means that the process might not look the same for you as it did with somebody that had like virgin style hair where it's never been touched, it's never been manipulated, there's no hormone issues. They're obviously going to go a lot faster because they're not necessarily having to depend on those issues. When you pick the area, when that area is hormone dependent, those do impact your overall treatment plan. Now, when you come in for a consultation, a lot of times based on those areas of growth, based on those hormone imbalances, based on the volume is when we start to be able to build, one, how long on the table you're going to be, how frequent those appointments are going to be, and then what the overall timeline might look like. If I know that someone has unmanaged hormones, they most likely have like hirsutism and it's pretty severe, but they don't have a lot of density outside of this area, I know that I'm going to be able to get them to a point of like clarity at each appointment quickly, but the overall timeline might look longer because I'm having to chase possible new hormonal growth. So when you're asking like, hey Steph, how long is this process going to take? I'm going to give you a window of 1.5 to 3 years, as long as we're medically managed when our hormones are going, as long as we're not manipulating those hairs in between your electrolysis sessions, as long as we're following the plans that are recommended, that should be the timeline that you have. It is the variables that we place upon ourselves. So for example, we can't get onto the table as recommended by your technician. We might not have the financial availability to do the work that is in front of us at the rate that we need to get it done to meet those needs. Those will create variations in that timeline. So overall, we will be able to say 1.5 to 3 years for the majority of your work to get done. But past that, when we have more variables that we're having to face, it means that the overall process is going to take us a longer time to get there. And quite frankly, probably be a little bit more of an annoying process because of those variables. Now, you'll still get permanent. It's just how long will it take? So I hope that helps answer those questions for you today. Peace, love, and hair removal, and I'll see you guys next Friday.